It's one of our most important things. And to get everybody to understand that we see things that they don't see, but they also see things we don't see. And sometimes neither of us knows what the heck we're doing. And that's okay. And it has to be okay. So it leads to the third area, and this has to do with the fear of failure. Now, failure is an unfortunate word because it has two meanings. Meaning number two is that we tried something new and it didn't work. So we learned that we want to fail quickly, learn from it, learn fast. That's meaning number two. We use it a lot, use it professionally. Meaning number one is the meaning you got when you were in high school. And if you failed a class, it's because you screwed up. All right? And it was a bad thing, but that's deeply ingrained into our culture. And it's one of the things that makes it difficult for us to deal with and think about failure. Inside Pixar, while we've never released a failure to the outside, so it's in like 11 successful films in a row, we have had many failures inside, including some massive ones, large write-downs. And the company, I mean, it's an interesting process that people actually take confidence in the fact that if we stop something, it means we haven't lost our ability to recognize when it's not working. And that's what they take comfort in. So the failure, occasionally large failure, the ones that hurt a lot, are good for our culture once in a while, although at the time nobody thinks so. They look back on it and they say, boy, I really learned a lot from that. So where do you cross the line from fixing the expected problems to massive meltdowns? So the first thing to note is there isn't a line. There's a terminology in other areas, and you're probably not as familiar with it, but it has to do with fractals and stochastic self-similarity, and there's a bunch of stuff like that. The issue is that there isn't this boundary, and we shouldn't even think that there's a boundary, so the failure can happen at any time. No one likes to fail with those bigger failures. The little stuff they don't think of as failures, it's just something we try. At some point they start to creeping into what they think of as failures. And while we can express to people that's okay, people don't like it, which means we have to work extra hard to make it okay and safe to do those things. But there does seem to be this real strong human force for safety and control and avoiding failure, and we need to understand what that force is. The first time I was a manager, I hired somebody who was clearly more qualified for the job than I was. And I was actually scared to hire him. But I went ahead and did it, and then he became my best friend. But I got through that fear, and I just remember that fear that I had. And there are other sources for the fears. The fear of messing up, or disappointing people, or embarrassing yourself with somebody else. And all these lead to this fear, and again, we need to understand this. We've all seen those Dilbert cartoons, of people doing strange things, but when you look at the strange things there, they actually have a basis. And so it's not a matter of poking fun at strange behavior, it's just fun to do that. But our responsibility is to figure out why they do the strange things. How do we fight this? Now we all know the phrase, it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. All right, now think about what this means. It means that the person in the organization wants to do the right thing, but some lame brain above them doesn't get it. So they feel so strongly about it. I think there's a top-down view of this story. Because the lame brain thing are because the managers don't want things to go off the rails. That's just responsibility. They don't want to screw up. There's too much risk of screwing up, so they put a lid on things. They're trying to prevent error. And so what I would maintain is that it is easier to fix problems than it is to prevent them. But the tendency is for people to try to prevent problems. That's where they feel the neck is on the line. That really screws things up. First of all, because you can't prevent problems. added change, which is a funny concept. It's one of the most pervasive facts of our life. We seem very ill-equipped to think about change. People would say that change is good, and we talk a lot about it, but the forces against change are formidable. And for good reason. People try to hang on to things that work. They want stories that work, or methods that work, strategies, business models that work. And if you make a change, your business model can be at risk, as we all know. And as we become more successful, we become more resistant to change. Because you build an organization that knows how to do something. It's also hard to change because you may look at a piece of it and say, this really needs to change, but it is strongly interconnected with other parts. And it's extremely difficult because of the resistance to change. We're in the family. Those forces that want to prevent change usually are stronger and prevail over the forces that are trying to address fundamental problems. When Disney acquired Pixar, the people at Pixar were very nervous about a large bureaucratic organization coming in and changing them unintentionally. Now, we in fact put in very significant barriers to keep those changes from happening, which I say did work. But at the time we're coming in, what they see is, oh, we've just been acquired by Disney. So there was a lot of fear. So I got up in front of them and said, don't worry, Pixar won't change. All right? It was a very stupid thing for me to have said. It was like giving them a hammer. So every time we tried to improve something, but you said Pixar wouldn't change. So I got up in front of the company and said, I made a mistake. What I really meant was it wouldn't change because of bureaucracy, but we would still go through our normal change. I still found the hammer being used against me. I had to get up in front of the company 3 times to explain that we will keep changing. Right. The forces are very strong. I want to give an example of change because for us we make movies and we've had some movies that have failed, and one of the reasons they fail is they get stuck. And they think they're doing something and they're circling around it. So there's something real about what they're doing. These are usually real, like it's a comic book version of the movie. And it doesn't work and they're told so, and then they keep circling around that. And what they don't see is they actually can't change. They're stuck. And our most successful directors are directors who change fairly dramatically. So my favorite example is from a movie that came out last year, which was Up. And it was one of my favorite movies. I'm not supposed to say it, but it was one of my favorite Pixar movies. So the first version of this movie took place in a castle that was floating in the sky. And there was a king and 2 princes in this castle. And the people in this castle floating in the sky were at war with the people on the ground. And the prince, one of the princes fell over at one point. He was wandering down in enemy territory. He did come upon a large bird. This version of the movie didn't work. The only thing left from that version was the bird and the word up. The second version, there's now a floating house with balloons, and it went up into the sky, and it landed on a lost Russian dirigible. That version didn't work. But we kept the old man in the house. The next version, the reason that Muntz, who was out on the Tepui in Venezuela, was there was because the bird laid an egg that kept him alive. Well, I got too complicated, so in the end, the egg had to go. But in the process of doing this, Pete Docter found something which touched a lot of people because he was searching for meaning to put in the film. Now, when he started, he couldn't say what the theme was. He violated every rule about how you actually design a product or something out there. But he ended up with something which is very phenomenal.